My name is Sienna Cross. On our 10th anniversary, my husband Graham invited his mistress to the party in our backyard and introduced her as his future. Then he told me to be mature because the house was marital property. He had never read the trust deed my grandmother filed before I ever met him. The party was my idea. I need to say that first because for a long time I blamed myself for setting the table where my marriage ended. 10 years felt worth marking, not because Graham and I had been perfect, but because I had mistaken endurance for proof. We had survived his job change, 2 miscarriages, my father's illness, a kitchen renovation that made us eat microwave dinners in the laundry room for 3 months, and the long, slow quiet that had settled between us in year 8. I thought a party might remind us of who we had been, so I rented string lights, I ordered flowers, I hired a small jazz trio because Graham once said live music made a house feel generous. I planned a backyard dinner for 30 people under the maple tree my grandmother planted before I was born. That tree mattered more than Graham ever understood. The house was not just a house. It was my grandmother's house. A white 2-story on Briar Lane with a wraparound porch, old glass doorknobs, and floors that creaked in the hallway outside the blue bedroom. My grandmother, Inez Cross, bought it after her divorce in 1974 with money she earned running a tailoring shop. She raised my mother there. Then, after my mother died, she raised me there too. When I was 23, Grandma put the house into the Cross Family Trust. Not because I expect you to fail, she told me at the attorney's office, because I expect people to ask for pieces of you and call it love. At 23, I thought that was dramatic. At 38, I knew she had been precise. The trust allowed me to live in the house, maintain it, and pass it to future children if I had any. It did not allow a spouse to claim ownership. It did not allow me to sell it without trustee approval. It did not treat marriage as a transfer. Graham knew the house came from my grandmother. He did not know the structure because he never asked. He preferred the phrase, our house. I let him use it because marriage is full of small, generous lies, and at first that one felt harmless. Then he started believing it. By year 7, Graham referred to the house as our biggest asset when talking to his brother. By year 9, he told a contractor to price out a garage conversion without asking me. When I objected, he said, "Sienna, we have to stop treating this place like a museum." I said, "We have to stop treating my grandmother's home like a project you manage." He did not speak to me for 2 days. The woman arrived at our anniversary party at 7:18, wearing a green dress and Graham's hand on her lower back. Her name was Blythe. I knew because he said it too loudly. "Everyone, this is Blythe from the firm." The firm. As if adding a workplace made her less visible. I was standing near the dessert table with a tray of lemon bars in my hand. My Aunt Laurel was beside me. She saw my face before I could arrange it. "Who is that?" she asked. "Apparently Blythe from the firm." Blythe smiled at me with the careful sympathy of a person who had been told she was entering a sad but necessary transition. "Sienna," she said, "it is nice to finally meet you." Finally. That word did the work of a confession. I set down the tray. Graham approached as if introducing a colleague at a conference. "I know this may feel awkward," he said quietly. "Does it?" "Please do not do this here." The audacity of that sentence nearly made me laugh. He had brought his affair to our anniversary party and was worried I might do something here. "What exactly did you bring here, Graham?" His jaw tightened. "We need to talk privately." "You made a public entrance." Blythe looked uncomfortable then. Not ashamed, just inconvenienced by the script changing. Guests had begun to notice. My cousins stopped mid-sentence. The saxophonist played softer, which somehow made everything worse. Graham took my elbow. I looked at his hand until he removed it. "Sienna," he said, "our marriage has been over emotionally for a long time." That sentence sounded rehearsed. Later, I would learn it came almost word for word from a podcast episode Blythe liked. "Interesting choice for an anniversary toast," I said. His face flushed. I wanted to be honest. No, you wanted witnesses. Blythe stepped forward. I do not want to hurt anyone. My Aunt Laurel made a noise behind me that sounded like a cough being strangled. I looked at Blythe. Then you should try not attending a wife's anniversary party with her husband. Her face went red. Graham's voice dropped. Enough. I turned back to him. Enough? We are going to handle this maturely. Are we? Yes, the house is marital property. There is no need to make this ugly. I am not trying to throw you out. The backyard went completely still. He had said it loud enough. Maybe he wanted to. Maybe humiliation was easier if he framed it as generosity first. I looked at the maple tree, at the lights I had paid to string through its branches, at the table where my grandmother used to shell peas in summer, at my husband standing on her lawn explaining ownership to me in front of his mistress. The house is not marital property, I said. He smiled, almost sadly. Sienna, do not start making legal claims you do not understand. There it was, the sentence that ended the marriage cleanly. Not the affair, not the green dress, not even the party. That sentence. Because Graham knew I understood. He knew I kept records. He knew I had handled my father's probate, my grandmother's medical bills, our taxes, the contractor disputes, the insurance claim after the roof leak. But in front of an audience, he needed me smaller. So I became precise. Laurel, I said, would you call Mr. Bellamy? My aunt had been waiting her whole life for a moment like that. She already had her phone out. Mr. Bellamy was the trust attorney. He lived 6 minutes away, wore bow ties without irony, and had once told me that a good trust was not a wall. It was a locked door with instructions. Graham laughed. You are calling a lawyer during our anniversary party? You brought a mistress to it. Someone near the patio whispered, Oh my God. Blythe said, Graham, maybe we should go. He shook his head. No, this is exactly what she does. She hides behind her grandmother whenever she does not want to face reality. I felt the old wound open. Graham had always been jealous of the house, though he would never use that word. He called it nostalgia. He called it control. He called it my inability to move forward. He did not understand that the house was the first place where I was not temporary. My mother died when I was 9. My father loved me but fell apart in practical ways. Grandma became the person who packed lunches, checked homework, fixed hems, and showed up early to every school play with tissues and peppermints. The house held me when the adults around me could not. Graham wanted it to be an asset because assets can be divided. Homes are harder to steal when they remember you. Mr. Bellamy arrived at 7:41 with a folder under one arm and a bow tie patterned with tiny clocks. The jazz trio had stopped playing. Guests stood in clusters pretending not to listen while listening with their whole bodies. Sienna, he said. Laurel said there was confusion about the trust. There is. Graham rolled his eyes. This is absurd. Mr. Bellamy looked at him over his glasses. Property confusion rarely improves when called absurd. I almost smiled. He opened the folder on the patio table, moving a vase of white roses aside. The top page was a certified copy of the trust summary. Under that, the deed transfer. Under that, the occupancy clause. Graham's confidence flickered for the first time. Mr. Bellamy read calmly. The property at 18 Briar Lane is held by the Cross Family Trust. Beneficial occupancy granted to Sienna Cross. No marital transfer created by residence, maintenance contribution, or shared use. No spouse shall acquire ownership interest by marriage, improvement, or claim of household asset. Blythe stared at Graham. My Aunt Laurel whispered, Inez, you beautiful woman. Graham said, I paid for improvements. Mr. Bellamy turned a page. Maintenance reimbursement does not create equity. The kitchen renovation invoices were paid from Sienna's separate inheritance account, with your contribution limited to the refrigerator and half the dishwasher. A cousin made a sound that might have been a laugh. Graham's face darkened. This is private. You made ownership public, I said. Blythe stepped back from him. "You told me you owned half," she said. There was another silence, different from the first. This one belonged to her. Graham looked at her. "I said we owned it." "You said you could buy Sienna out." My stomach turned, but not from surprise, from confirmation. He had not brought Blythe to confess. He had brought her to witness my replacement in a house he thought he could divide. Mr. Bellamy closed the folder. "Sienna, as trustee representative, I must also advise that if Graham no longer resides here as your spouse, you can revoke his occupancy permission." Graham stared at him. "She cannot kick me out tonight." Mr. Bellamy adjusted his glasses. "Not physically, but she can give written notice tonight." My Aunt Laurel held out a pen. I loved her so much in that moment. "Sienna," Graham said, voice suddenly lower, "let's not do this." That was the first time he used "we" all night. "We ended when you brought her here," I said. "The paperwork is just catching up." I signed the occupancy revocation at my own anniversary party, under the maple tree my grandmother planted. Mr. Bellamy witnessed it. Laurel witnessed it. The saxophonist, who had begun pretending to pack very slowly, probably could have witnessed it too. Graham left with Blythe, not dramatically, not with shouting. He walked through the side gate carrying the jacket I had bought him for Christmas, while 30 people pretended to study their shoes. Blythe did not leave with his hand on her back. The party ended in pieces. Some guests hugged me, some escaped. My aunt poured lemonade into wine glasses and declared that anyone staying had to help clean. The jazz trio offered not to charge for the last hour. I paid them anyway. At midnight, the backyard was quiet except for the hum of the rented lights. I sat under the maple tree with the trust folder on my lap. Laurel sat beside me. "Your grandmother knew," she said. "About Graham?" "About people." I touched the edge of the deed. "I thought the trust was pessimistic." "No," Laurel said. "It was a love letter with locks." The next morning, Graham came back alone. He had slept at a hotel, he said. Blythe needed space, he said. We needed to talk like adults, he said. I met him on the porch. He looked past me into the house. "Can I come in?" "No." His face tightened. "Sienna." "No." "My things are inside." Laurel and I packed essentials. Mr. Bellamy arranged a supervised time for the rest. "You are being cruel." "You announced your mistress at our anniversary party." "I handled that badly." I laughed once. Handled badly, like he had dropped a glass. "Graham, you tried to introduce my replacement in my grandmother's backyard and then claim the house." He looked down. "Blythe thought it would be cleaner if everyone knew." "Blythe does not get a vote in my life." "I know." "Do you?" He had no answer. The divorce took 9 months. Graham fought the trust for the first 2, then stopped after his own attorney explained, probably with smaller words, that Grandma Inez had written better protections than he had assumptions. He received what was legally his: shared bank funds, his retirement, his personal property, the refrigerator contribution accounted for in a settlement so petty it became funny by the end. He did not receive the house. The mediation was held in a downtown office with frosted glass walls and a bowl of peppermints nobody touched. Graham arrived with a binder that made me almost respect the effort until he opened it. Inside were photos of the kitchen renovation, receipts for hardware store purchases, and a spreadsheet labeled Sweat Equity. He had listed hours spent painting, mowing, installing shelves, and emotional investment in home life. Mr. Bellamy read that last line twice. "Emotional investment is not a lien," he said. Graham's attorney cleared his throat and suggested they were not claiming it as a formal lien, only demonstrating contribution. Mr. Bellamy turned to the trust clause and slid it across the table. "The trust anticipated maintenance contributions by residents," he said. "It rejects equity conversion explicitly." Graham looked at me then, angry in the helpless way people become when a document refuses to care about their feelings. So I get nothing for 10 years? You get the marriage settlement, I said. You do not get my grandmother. His face changed. For the first time, I think he understood the distinction. Not accepted it, understood it. You always loved this house more than me, he said. I thought about that for a moment because old guilt still knows where the doors are. No, I said. I loved this house before you. You mistook that for competition. The mediator looked down at his notes. Mr. Bellamy's mouth twitched. Graham had no answer that did not make him sound smaller than the spreadsheet already had. That day, he withdrew the house claim. He still argued about the refrigerator. I let him have the refrigerator. Laurel said Grandma Inez would have considered that a bargain. Blythe did not stay with him. I know because she wrote me a letter. Not an apology exactly, but close enough to be strange. She said Graham had told her I was emotionally absent, that the house was a cage, that he was trying to begin honestly. She believed the version of me that made her choices feel less ugly. At the end, she wrote, "The deed changed how I saw him. It changed how I saw myself, too." There was one more document I had not expected. After the divorce was final, Mr. Bellamy mailed me a copy of a letter Grandma Inez had written when she created the trust. It was not legally necessary, he said. It was not binding. She had asked him to keep it with the file and give it to me when, in her words, the girl needs reminding that locked doors are not unkind. I read it at the kitchen table. Sienna, if you are reading this because someone is angry that the house is protected, let them be angry outside. A home is not proof that you love someone. Giving it away is not proof either. The right person will understand shelter. The wrong person will call it selfish because he wanted shelter to become leverage. I had to stop there. For months I had been telling myself the trust saved me from Graham. That letter reminded me it had also saved me from the version of myself that might have given too much away just to be called generous. I folded the letter and placed it behind the deed. Not because I needed more proof, because I needed her voice near the lock. For months after the party, I hated the backyard. I hated the maple tree lights. I hated the patio table where Mr. Bellamy had opened the folder. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a witness statement. Then spring came. The maple leafed out green and stubborn. I planted rosemary near the steps. Laurel came over on Sundays. We painted the blue bedroom because I was tired of preserving every shade of the past. One afternoon, while sanding the porch rail, I realized I was not restoring the house for my grandmother anymore. I was maintaining it for myself. That difference mattered. On what would have been our 11th anniversary, I did not throw a party. I invited 6 people who had stayed after the disaster and helped clean. We ate at the kitchen table, no string lights, no speeches. Laurel brought lemon bars because she said the dessert table deserved redemption. Before they left, I took the trust folder from the drawer and placed it back in the fireproof box where it belonged. Not on display. I did not need to live like a person waiting to prove ownership. The proof existed whether anyone was looking. That was harder to learn than the legal part. For a while, every visitor made me want to mention the trust. Every contractor, every neighbor, every friend who said the house looked peaceful. I wanted to say, "It is mine. It was always mine." I wanted to defend a door nobody was attacking, because Graham had trained me to expect a claim inside every compliment. Laurel stopped me one afternoon. "You know you can just live here," she said. "I am." "No," she said. "You are testifying here." She was right. So I practiced ordinary ownership. I planted basil. I replaced a cracked porch tile. I let a friend sleep in the blue bedroom without explaining the trust first. The house did not become less protected because I stopped announcing the lock. That was when it became home again instead of evidence. Quiet, protected, and mine. I did not need applause from a room that had already heard the deed. Ever. Not once. My grandmother's house is quiet now. Not empty. Quiet. The maple tree still shades the yard. The porch still creaks in the same places. The kitchen no longer feels like a stage for someone else's announcement. It feels like a room where I can make coffee in bare feet and not wonder who is planning my exit. Sometimes people ask if I regret the party. I do not. Without it, Graham might have tried to make me negotiate slowly, privately, politely. He might have wrapped betrayal in counseling language and convinced half our friends that I was unreasonable for wanting to keep what was never his. Instead, he made his claim in public, and the trust answered in public too. That is my story. My husband brought his future to my anniversary party because he thought my past had no legal teeth. My grandmother's trust deed proved otherwise. If someone stands in your home and calls your inheritance a shared asset because they got comfortable using it, remember this: love can invite someone in, but paperwork decides who owns the door. Share this with someone who needs that reminder, and tell me where you are listening from.